Hey friends, we're finally here. We got to test out Shroud's gaming PC, obviously not his, but we built his gaming PC in a previous video, which you can check out right there. And then this is the video where we see just how fast we can make it go, because what good is a super slick water-cooled gaming PC if you're not playing video games on it? So let's talk about the performance and everything we did after I tell you about today's video sponsor. Today's video is actually brought to you by Massdrop, and more specifically their Sennheiser HD58X Jubilee headphones. We actually did an entire video where we checked these things out, and my goodness, these are the best audiophile grade headphones that you can get in their price range. It is hard to find a reason not to buy them, whether it be for gaming, whether it be for music, or anything that you're doing on a computer. The HD58Xs from Massdrop are phenomenal. World-class audio. The open back headphones give you a very wide sound stage that's so crisp that you will realize that you need higher quality music files. So if you're interested in picking up the Sennheiser HD58Xs, you can do so at the link in the video description. So, we got a lot of goodness. Let me just recap for everybody who potentially didn't watch the previous video. We're running a Core i7-8700K on the ROG Strix Z370 Maximus 10 formula. We've got 16 gigabytes of Trident Z RGB RAM running at 3600 megahertz. Then we have the RTX 2080 Ti Founders Edition with a 2 terabyte NVMe drive, a 1000 watt power supply, and then all of this custom EK water blocks liquid cooling setup, all cooled down by 5 Corsair LL120 fans. It's a gorgeous system. It has a lot of power to it, and Shroud definitely has some of the best components known to man. Obviously, a couple of the things in this system might be a little out of date, but as we'll find out in the benchmarks, it didn't really matter at all. So in the specs that we saw of Shroud's gaming PC, he has his 8700K overclocked to 5.3 gigahertz. Our 8700K is a pathetic little turd wad who could only get up to 5.2 gigahertz. So Shroud, not only better in games than everybody, but also getting golden sample CPUs that can strip everybody else of their title. But obviously, all of the gaming is done by the graphics card. CPU only kind of helps lift it a little bit. And since we know that Shroud actually plays games on the BenQ Zowie 240Hz 1080p monitor, we tested all of our games at 1080p to see what kind of performance we could actually get out of this system. We would have bought his actual monitor, but they don't sell those Zowie models here in South Africa, and then like the import fees are like an extra 70%. So it's crazy, not worth doing. And until the 1440p 240Hz monitor from LG comes out next year, it's kind of the best that you're gonna get for competitive gaming. So let's talk about the GPU. We couldn't overclock our CPU to 5.3 gigahertz, but we did happen to get some beefy performance out of that 2080 Ti. Obviously, Shroud hasn't posted any of his specs online as far as whether or not his graphics card is overclocked, but I'll tell you what we were able to do, because our goal with this video was to get the fastest setup that we could out of what we have here. So with the GPU, actually, let me just pull it up here. With the GPU, what we ended up doing was putting up a 123% power limit, adding 100 megahertz on the core clock, and then 1200 megahertz on the memory clock. And since it's double data rate, that's an extra 2.4 gigahertz, making the entire memory speed 16.6 gigabits per second, which is insane, because I think the stock speed is only like 14 gigabits per second. So we got an insane overclock on the GDDR6 on this thing. That extra 100 megahertz on the core only brought us to 1,965 megahertz after everything was said and done, because the Founders Editions tend to run a little slower. We're mainly limited by the power limit, not by the temperature or by anything else. So that's the specs. Overclocked 2080 Ti to 1965, got 16.6 gigabits per second on the memory, 5.2 gigahertz on that 8700K, and then 3600 megahertz on that RAM. And let's talk about video games. We just went through our benchmarking suite. I didn't test any games that I know Shroud plays. Actually, I did. We tried Apex and CSGO, so that's we'll discuss that. So with all of the games that we benchmarked, we actually tested them at the highest settings possible. You can't go any higher than what we set it to. So if you're listening to all of this and you're like, dang, Shroud would never play on that, it needs to be 240 FPS. He just has to drop the settings, which I'm sure he does in some ways to get a competitive advantage, because you don't need certain settings on when you're playing games in a certain way. I don't know. I'm a pleb gamer, okay? So let's go ahead and talk about what we got with max settings on every game that we played. So Hitman 2, we got 109 FPS there. Middle-earth Shadow of War came out to 163. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, 152 FPS. Strange Brigade, which is a new Vulcan title, came out to 263 FPS. The brand new Devil May Cry 5 averaged 248 FPS on highest settings possible. Resident Evil 2, again, was 263 FPS, over that sweet 240 hertz limit. Final Fantasy 15 was 142. Metro Exodus, this is where we get into some funny stuff. With ray tracing on, or RTX on, which includes deep learning super sampling, we got 86 FPS. With ray tracing off, or RTX off, we got 100.5 FPS. It's all right. Metro Exodus is probably one of the hardest games to run that's out there right now. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, we got 88.3 FPS. Far Cry New Dawn was 129. Ghost Recon Wildlands was 97.1. Battlefield 5, with ray tracing fully on, we got 96.5. With ray tracing off, we got 138.5. Then in Apex Legends, max settings, everything thrown up to all the highest goodness that you could get. 206 FPS, which is really fast. And then CSGO, 1080p, everything maxed out to the highest bidder, 285 FPS. I know people like to play over 300, so you'll have to drop a couple things here and there. I'm so sorry. And then just for funsies' sake, the Port Royal ray tracing benchmark, we managed to get a graphics score of 8,819. That is a fast system. As I mentioned, that is at completely max settings. Greatest visual fidelity that you could possibly have. If we lowered it, I'm sure that we could easily hit 240 FPS in most games. Probably not the likes of a Metro Exodus or an Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but everything else is super fast. And even though I say that Shroud's build is a little out of date because it's on the 8th gen Intel processor with the Z370 motherboard and not Z390, the honest truth is here, with this CPU and GPU combo, the CPU is at max 40-50%. It's not the bottleneck at all. There's hardly a reason for Shroud to upgrade to anything. It just didn't seem to matter whatsoever. So I can understand why he's still on an outdated CPU and motherboard, because he hasn't yet hit a bottleneck with his RTX 2080 Ti. Maybe with the next generation of NVIDIA cards, when he gets those sponsored, it would be possible, but not currently at this moment. Again, I do have to complain about the fan setup that Shroud has, where the fans are blowing air into the system. It's clearly this way. When I look at all of the images that I found of Shroud's system, he has it set up like this. I don't like it, one, because it's dumping all of the hot air back onto everything, which then has to rise out of the case anyways because hot air rises. And then secondly, we get all of the illumination facing outside. I would love to have the actual water cooling lit up by these RGB fans. It would look so much better to have them on the inside. And I mean, Shroud's a super rich dude with 100,000 Twitch subs. You just get 5 more, you stack them on the inside, you have a double scenario where you're getting all of the heat dissipation there. You have them lit up on the inside and the outside. Best case scenario, everything just looks gorgeous. I would highly recommend that, both for airflow reasons, but then also gorgeousness, or even just sheer white LED fans in there, because that illuminating the green liquid cooling loop would look fantastic. And also, I mentioned this in the build video itself, you're not losing performance. That's the hardest thing about this. It bugs me. It irks my gurks, as we like to say here in the office, that this motherboard that he chose, the Maximus 10 Formula, it's called the Formula because it has a water cooling block for the VRMs on the CPU. You could easily install the fittings there to actually add that to the loop, get a more stable overclock, cool those down, allow the motherboard to run for a little while longer. Obviously, he's probably not interested in longevity since he's probably going to have everything sponsored. But it could work out so much better, and I personally think it would look better if we either didn't have a Maximus formula board and we just had something like the Maximus 10 Hero or the Maximus 10 Code as opposed to the formula, or just adding those into the loop because the 360 and 240 millimeter radiator on this case would be more than enough to handle it. Water cooling the RTX 2080 Ti, perfectly sufficient. And if you water cooled the 2080 Ti, you probably want to get much better performance because you're power limited, so you'd have to do a power mod onto it. So actually he would just have to upgrade to a different 2080 Ti if I'm being honest. Picking up something like the Aorus Water Force Extreme, or I mean, since Asus sponsors him, the Matrix 2080 Ti, which has the water cooling block built into the Shroud itself. Shroud, get it? Anyways, that would be a really great upgrade for him. He could get much better overclocking performance, and not even just overclocking performance. It would be better right out of the box. And especially since this is a GPU bound scenario for most of the games that he's playing at 1080p, that would be the most ideal upgrade that he could possibly make here. The 9900K would hardly do him any better, at least from what I can see in all of the testing that we did. We weren't CPU bound in any single game that we played at 1080p. And obviously this is just Shroud's gaming PC. We did consider potentially doing the entire full layout, but unfortunately budget stopped us. Spent $4,000 on the gaming computer by itself, and we don't have 100,000 Twitch subs. So I mean, if you want to give us a Twitch Prime sub, you know, over on Twitch, you can do it. I'll leave a link in the description. Just saying. But if you want us to check out other streamers, be sure to let us know who your top recommended streamer is down in the comments. We'll try to recreate their build one for one. Probably have to sell off some of Shroud's builds to recoup the cost on that, but just let us know, and we're keen to build it and benchmark it and let them know what potential upgrades and changes could be made to their system in order to get them a better running setup. Anyways, hit the like button if you guys enjoyed this video. Get subscribed to stay up to date on all of our tech related content. Don't forget that this video is brought to you by Massdrop and their Sennheiser HD58X Jubilee headphones. You guys should check them out at the link in the video description. You cannot beat them for the price that they come in at. And that's it. I'm Brett with the UFD Tech Channel. Thank you guys so much for watching this two-part series on Shroud's gaming computer. Let us know what you think of it. It was an experiment for us, so we're keen to see how you all respond to it. If you like it, if you want us to do more, we're more than keen to spend more of our hard-earned money on computers we don't need. That's it. All the links to buy the parts for what Shroud has are going to be in the video description if you want to do that. Yeah, and I'll see your smiling faces again in the next video. Love you too. Bye.